today for the Academic Roundtable. We've been in the Ark since last weekend, and we have had many experiences. And so we've also had many discussions. And so today we're going to be talking about different subjects. And the first panel is with Edgardo Garrido-Perez, Kayla Anderson, and Heist. And we're going to talk about ecology and capitalism. So, the first question. I'd like you to all give a short introduction to your background and what your own research can bring to the table in dealing with the subjects of ecology and capitalism. I'd also like you to each go around and tell about your time in the Ark and maybe share some words about your experience and how it's affected you psychologically or practically, especially in terms of the subjects, in terms of ecology and capitalism. We'll start with Kayla. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So my research that I was presenting here was about the Anthropocene as a concept, which I'll explain a little for anyone who isn't familiar with it, but it's been a proposal since 2001 for naming our current epoch. Technically, according to stratigraphers, we're in the Holocene. So there's this proposal to kind of rename our epoch, looking at how humans have affected the environment on a geological scale. So looking at humans as a geological force. And it's also tied into things like colonialism, racism, and all these systems that both cause kind of like interpersonal damage, but also ecological damage. But I particularly look at it in terms of how artists and designers respond to it. So looking at how their work doesn't necessarily propose these really practical solutions, because often the practical solutions, and I don't know, that was a really quick explanation of it, but I gave a really long 70-slide talk, so with lots of explanation, but you can ask questions. But so usually the kind of responses coming out to the human impact on the environment is things like geoengineering, or kind of trying to keep doing the same thing and changing things. And so I'm looking at how artists are exploring that concept to kind of slow us down, or kind of make us more hesitant about what we're doing, but then also in a way that allows us to think about scenarios we might not have thought about. So in terms of this panel topic, one of those things is there are several artists who have proposed these alternative energy systems or alternative economies to kind of really look at the way that we depend on energy and what would happen if we changed that. So what would happen to our own, of course, in the literal sense, but also in terms of ethics and how we would live. And so to then talk about my experience here, it's been really great to kind of see a series of everyone has presented on different topics, and it's kind of changed what I think each day. And I guess I won't spoil anyone's. But yeah, I kind of feel like we started off kind of like up in this more abstract way of talking about things, and then got very grounded. For instance, Margaret really showed us these real models that are happening where people are taking control of their economies and their lives. So yeah.
Eric, something about your background and about your time here and how you research, how you brought your research to the table.
My name is Eric Heist. I was brought here to speak about a particular project in the early 90s that occurred called Biosphere 2. It was a closed system in a multi-million-dollar facility in the desert in Arizona, where 8 people lived together inside this closed system. They grew their own food. The environment provided everything that they needed to exist. And that project was difficulties of those people living together, how hard it is for people to, not just to physically, but psychological aspects of it. And it ended after 2 years, there's another group that came in. So it was a sort of an art and science collaboration that was inspired by the ideas, in particular, of Buckminster Fuller. But then there was someone with had a lot of funding, they had a lot of money to do this, and that probably affected. There were people outside of the biosphere that were making decisions about people inside that caused some friction. And about, let's see, this project, I think it began for me about sort of personal meditation, dealing with the group here, how is that we can recognize each other, what are the boundaries of our personal identities, and trying to move that forward to a larger group when we went outside to the park. As a group, suddenly our boundaries, we weren't sure if they were going to expand or not, and I think we found that they did expand. So that was a very positive aspect of this.
Edgardo, something about your background and your research, and then about your time in art. Especially, Edgardo is our biologist for residents, and he's been conducting experiments with the participants, and you'll be able to try that today as well. So yes, some words, please.
Thank you. I am Panamanian, born and grown. I spent my first 3 years in Panama, that means in a tropical environment. So I am tropical ecologist in the beginning. I started like that. And after some time learning from others how to make scientific research over there, I went out of Panama to Mexico and then to Germany and for PhD studies. Science is not enough for understanding many things, but ecology became a kind of, not a fashion, but a kind of, playing a major role for society over the past decades. And when I started doing or learning ecology, most of the guys doing the job were trying to study nature without people. I met many people running tropical ecology, tropical biology, evolution projects in tropical, very remote areas, assuming that people is not there. People have been there since thousands of years. They have been transforming nature. Mexicans know it very well. They have been developing a study of human-nature interactions. So I had the privilege of learning from them. And now it is a major subject because of the Anthropocene you were explaining. We are knocking on the planet. And perhaps something I was trying to bring with me, and perhaps I didn't do it properly, is to give a kind of hope. In the very same way we have destructive activities affecting nature or destroying aspects of nature, there are others letting nature to resprout because nature is more powerful than us. So basically, the idea I am trying to bring here is that the process of global change and destruction of nature is uneven. There are areas in the world where it is going deeper than others, and there are lifestyles doing better than others. We just need to learn from each other, and that's why the art is marking it. Because we can learn from each other, we can learn from other cultures, we can learn from what your own people were doing here in Europe before the Industrial Revolution. Go back to that, or learn from the people who are living in a non-capitalist way somehow. I mean, there's a touch of capitalism, of course, but less heavy, like in the middle of nowhere or everywhere in the Amazon. And here I am learning, getting back in social life, because sometimes you isolate yourself, like just forget that you belong to a community of dreamers.
I remember in your talk, Ecology, I think you mentioned that there are some places, I think it was in the Amazon, in Ecuador, that the local people, they didn't necessarily believe climate change was happening, or they had other mythologies about climate change. When you're showing aerial photos of different sections of the forest, which have been used in different ways, so through the Spanish conquistadors or all the way up today. I had an idea, maybe I misunderstood, but this idea that people's idea of climate change is very different in different places, and it's not necessarily, this idea of the sky, you have this, the holding up the sky. And was it in your talk? Was it your talk, Kayla?
It's fine. But no, it relates to the research that you were sharing. There was just a part of my talk. I'm really inspired by the book by Edgardo I, Words Living on the Mani Shaman. But he talks about their cosmology or cosmovision, which I like your word, where in their society the sky has already fallen and they live on the back of the fallen sky. So I'm kind of thinking of, we were talking about, this kind of came up and we were talking about the idea of apocalypse and how sometimes with how we start to talk about climate change, we start to think that feel like we're in an apocalypse or this mass extinction and like it's too late to do anything. And I found that really useful in terms of thinking of these sort of different endings and beginnings of worlds, and how some worlds are sort of set up and accommodate more chaos, and maybe ours, the one that our dominant cosmovision doesn't allow for chaos. That's necessary.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also there were different stages within your research. Different parts of the forest had different names and evolution. Puran, Essen. Maybe you can explain those.
Well, basically, it is not that they don't have an idea of climate change, but it is something very rare. And the reason is that people living in the Amazon, they have been there since thousands of years. And they developed a way to engage in relation, a land use system, taking advantage of the natural cycles. You clear cut an area, you must keep it small. If you make it too large, then rainfall, which is very strong over there, can just sweep all of the nutrients of the soil. So your harvest is not going to be good. You clear cut an area, you keep it surrounded by forest, or almost totally surrounded by forest. So after using the land, the forest recovers very quickly. They call it the chakra period, when they are taking the clear cutting. They take seeds from other places, from forests nearby, from the same one. They keep them, they nurse them, but they plant then some manihog and starch-rich plants and vitamins and so on. Relatively quick growing plants. Then the forest starts to recover, and they are going in touch with it. They are replanting. They are planting some of the trees they take, and then while the forest is in this process of regrowth, they take advantage of it differentially. Okay, now I have something in my home. I need a stump, for example, or I need a post or whatever, and then they take it and do it. And the females are the ones running or leading the crop process. And little by little, the men are getting more introduced. And at the end, you have something looking like a forest. As a biologist, you say, oh, this is a forest. It's not a forest. It's manipulated. It's managed. But by means of using and reusing it, they delay the process of forest full speed recovery. So by growing slower, the forest is uptaking less carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. From the point of view of climate change mitigation, you say, well, this is not a good land use against climate change. But the problem is that they did not invent climate change. Climate change is something we discovered in the universities. It doesn't belong to the culture of the people who are practicing environmentalist lifestyles. Our environmentalism is an ideology. We developed it It's coming out of universities and science, or the way we get some knowledge, and we try to make people to change, and that's good. Yeah, but for me, there are two kinds of environmentalism. One is the ideological one. We are propelling it, and we need it. And the other is the lifestyle. And I really would like to encourage people to look into the lifestyles of other guys, other cultures, and then borrow something, and try also to get into your own culture and improve it. That's the thing. I think it's worth to say, however, that the system, the land use system they are using over there, the Amazon, it is much better for keeping biodiversity. They are not focusing on the climate. They are detecting some changes in the climate. Yeah, but it still rains a lot. At least on the area it is not a problem, it's in Ecuador. But in contrast, they need a high diversity of plants and animals in order to guarantee food security and more resources and, farming independence.
That's interesting, because in terms of the biosphere in Arizona, which obviously had a huge budget, 183 million, something like that. Yeah, so in today's world it would be even more. And I would be interested from your perspective, because I just travelled to Arizona last month and I went to the biosphere, but you spent probably more time there and looking at how they created the biosphere, and maybe you can describe the different usage in the buildings, the different buildings, and maybe describe what kind of impact you think having this kind of closed system within a natural desert environment is an impact on the natural environment by having this alien kind of system put on top.
Well, I think a lot of the choices that were made about what plants and animals would go into the biosphere too were made from a almost emotional as well as scientific viewpoint. So some of the choices were not so good. They didn't have that much biodiversity, and that was a shortcoming of the project. So William S. Burroughs, who was one of the people that they got advice from on it, writer William S. Burroughs, junkie, and so forth, suggested a rebus monkey, I think it was, that just screamed and kept everybody up all night. So it wasn't worked out that well. He also had problems with loss of oxygen because, as it turned out, they were losing a lot of oxygen. They were barely surviving, and they were also almost starving at points. And also they were run over by cockroaches. So there were a lot of imbalances in the system. So basically, if you give a lot of artists free rein to do things, it's probably leads to something not so good. We'll see. There was a precursor to this, which was the Russian system, which happened in Siberia, and we didn't know very much about it here until recently. But there they were very careful about what plants they put in and finding more biodiversity. And that was much more successful in the long-term sustenance of human life. They grew algae, which they didn't do, and it was a much smaller experiment. Oh, in Arizona? Such a what? Oh, they were setting. Yeah, well, there were parts of it that were desert on the inside. It was desert within desert, but there was savanna, there's rainforest in the middle of the desert, and there's an ocean. Yeah, so it was contrast.
Yeah. And do you think that had an impact on the local environment? Because all the small towns are quite close, the villages. We stayed in a small Airbnb that's quite close, but it didn't feel like the people that lived there really connected or went to the biosphere. Even now, even though it's open to the public, it still seems like a closed environment that only certain people go to. Obviously, people are interested in science, and schools go, universities go, but it still seems like the biosphere is somehow cut off. And in contrast to our performance yesterday, our protest, when we had come from a closed environment and then we went out into the street, and in Aubervilliers, which is obviously a very intense neighbourhood, and we were very colourfully dressed, and we made these amazing costumes and everything. We'd gone out, and it was very spontaneous. I mean, we knew where we were going to walk. We were going to walk up Avenue Republic to the Stalingrad Square. And then we came across this swimming pool, this pool outside with all these children playing, these fountains, and that was amazing. And they really interacted with our costumes because the children thought we were real animals. So they went into a whole other imaginary space. And then obviously when we were coming back, we walked to the metro, which is very intense, very busy, very masculine dominated area. Very serious area where people, usually they sell cigarettes or they shout at you, or they don't smell so much. And we kind of made people laugh. We made them stop. We made them stare. They took photos and filmed us, and I think we kind of cheered them up for just a moment because it would just seem so absurd in this performance of this protest. And the protest was about extinct animals, and we were shouting different slogans in French and English about wanting to bring animals back to life, like the dodo, and the platypus, and the saber-toothed tiger, and stuff. So, to our next question. If we think about ecology and capitalism, they appear to be contradictory in the first place, because they have very different functions and opposing end goals. How do you think this difference can be resolved in order to stem the tide of climate change, our current ecological crisis? Kayla. No, Kayla. Okay, I'll say the question again. It's just that ecology and capitalism appear to be contradictory in the first place because of their different functions and their opposing end goals. So how do you think this difference can be resolved in order to stem the tide of climate change? So how can those two forces, very powerful forces, ecology, nature, and capitalism, how can they work together?
Well, my obvious answer is that I don't exactly know. Sorry, everyone. But I think that, and something that Eric's talk really reminded me of is, and I mean, people love to say that quote about it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism, which isn't really true. I mean, it's not true. We can imagine the end of capitalism, or, or actually it's pretty hard to imagine what the end of the world, or what that means, if it's our world or the Earth or whose world it is. But the Biosphere Project, which I had never really thought of it in this way, really struck me because it assumes that Earth is no longer a livable planet for humans right off the bat. And so it's sort of developed as this way of preparing. And so I'm really interested in how often that kind of impulse comes up of just thinking like, oh, we can't change anything now, we're already stuck in this system, we're going to keep extracting these resources in this way and this much. And that's, I think, mostly in part, at least in the US where I'm from and live, because the people who are spearheading these industries don't want to, they don't want us to stop using and being dependent in this way. And so they work really hard at making those things, making changes of, this like systemic, broad systems change seem impossible. But I think that, I think we have to kind of brainstorm and come up with ways of imagining that it's not. And so, yeah, I guess because of that, I'm interested to hear from you in terms of places and things that you've researched and, yeah.
Well, let me start proposing an approach. For non-easy questions, probably the best answer is to give hints on how to get an answer. You know, I would really like to encourage you guys to remember that the process is uneven. Capitalism is uneven. Anthropocene is uneven. Extinction is uneven. And the processes of conserving nature and restoring what is destroyed are also uneven. So let me propose you guys to think a little bit in comparisons, just to try to check where things are going better than other places, and then learn from each other and share. Panama, for instance, over the past 30 years or something, has been clear-cutting everything, and deforestation came very hard. And it is not a kind of, expansion of the agrarian areas anymore, but also getting urban, skyscrapers in Panama City. Skyscrapers expanding to the beaches where the people go swimming and so on. That's too much. And Panama is paying the price in a couple of years, about 10 years, something like that. We are experiencing floods, enhanced drought, and that kind of problems. This is not only because of the summers, we call it the dry season, we call it summer, is stronger due to climate change. It is also because we were deforesting too much. And then when it rains, the mud comes down, the rivers rise up faster, and then your homes are gone, and that has been occurring. Compared to Ecuador, where the government, over the past 13 years or something like that, they sat down, they made a new constitution, and included in the constitution rights for the motherland. Yeah, it is constitutional. So the idea of including the habitat you are living on as a person having rights puts you to discuss, okay, now how are the rights to be defended? How do we punish the people violating the rights? Who is going to defend the land? Which kind of culture do we apply? How do we learn from the different cultures coexisting in our country? It is not closed in Ecuador, it is not closed in Latin America, but from these points of view, you can borrow something. You can compare Panama with Ecuador. In Panama, capitalism came very strong, and the results are really heavy, really bad. In Ecuador, you can say, okay, it is being rough here too, but there is a kind of hope. There is something the citizenship can do by defending, someone. In Bolivia, something similar. Now, come to Europe. Think of Slovenia. More than 60% of the national surface covered by forest. If you let the forest to cover everything, then you get less flowering plants, because most of the flowering plants here are herbs, not trees. So you lose biodiversity if you get the forest to cover everything. That's interesting on the Mediterranean, on the highlands, on the Alps, here in Europe. So land used by humans, enhancing grazing by cattle and so on, is to be applied and controlled. Perhaps for me, the third important thing is really to remember the following. Capitalists, I mean the big business men, big business women, they are not going to stop, because they really believe that the capitalism the economy must rise up and rise up and rise up and rise up by definition. The problem is that the numbers don't fit with the ecology, the numbers coming from ecology. There are limits. We don't know which the limits are, but we know that when you go beyond the limit, there is a collapse. And then humans are the ones suffering the collapse. They populate in the area, and then nature comes back again. So in order not to reach a collapse, in order not to damage ourselves, we need to find a way to stop capitalism and control the level of growth and the speed of growth. The state must assume that, because citizenship can press, okay? But if we don't take control of the state and we don't, make them to pay more taxes, if you are knocking on Mother Earth, and then you pay more, and then de-stimuli, depletion of nature. If you don't do it, they are not going to do it. And it is a work for the state, and we must really, really demand that.
I was just going to add something. Why do you think human beings are so unmotivated then? Why is it that we have to be basically blackmailed into looking after the environment? You know, why do we have to threaten people through punishment, through law, or through money? What is it in us that doesn't understand about just naturally wanting to care and have empathy? It's just a question to keep in the back of your mind.
See if I can formulate this. One of the I remember Kayla speaking earlier about this need to go to another planet and to sort of give up on this planet. And some of the people who are thinking about this, people like Elon Musk or Robert Zubrin, are starting to formulate some ideas of what kind of government would occur there. And we're seeing someone, I mean, Musk is talking about direct democracy. Zubrin, on the other hand, is from a libertarian viewpoint.
Can you explain, sorry?
That everyone participates, that there's a direct, there's no need for government, that we are the government. But in the case of Zubrin, it's about real estate, it's about how do we build settlements and how do we extend settlements and how do some individuals get ahead of other individuals. So the people who, to look at the roots of libertarianism, it's insanity. The people who, in the 20s and 30s, at least in the United States, believed that they were from ascended masters. So they were direct descendants of Muhammad and Jesus Christ. So these are people who have incredible ideas about power, about personal power. And we're talking about replicating these ideas, I think. And we're missing all of the psychological aspects of running this planet in the process. So ideas about identity need, I think, in order, if we're talking about trying to get along with this planet, then the first thing is limiting ideas of identity. How do we find a balance so that we can get along? And that's one thing that's, at least for me, in the process of being here, has become most clear about what those limits are that can be more sustainable.
Okay, just the last question before we open to the public. So how does this relate to the Ark? Because obviously the processes of capitalism in the Ark are even, first of all, when you entered the Ark, you surrendered your identity, you gave over your passports, you gave over your wallets, you gave over your phones, so you were cut off from the outside world. And then you were taken within this closed system, and obviously we had some ecology, we had the garden, we had attempted to grow some food in the garden, some of it was successful, some of it wasn't. How do you think these processes relate to within the Ark?
I guess one thing is, so we're sort of cutting ourselves off from that system momentarily, but we're also still embedded in it in terms of like how we all ended up, maybe not all of us, but how we kind of came here, which is always an interesting thing to me to think about. Like there are sort of parts of this system that we don't want to be kind of participating in, but that allow us to have these times where we're cutting ourselves off, and that's always a really interesting problem for me to think about in terms of all the things that we do that are, and this is again, this is relating to Margaret's talk, but all the things that we do that we don't think of as being violent, but then there's like this kind of delayed violence that happens. Not to say that, so it's not particular to this project, but I was thinking, because Edgardo and I were talking about how, in terms of the Anthropocene and this whole debate over when it started, because it has such political implications, that, of course, there are some people who are like, why do they need to spend all this time trying to figure out when humans started causing this damage? Like, isn't it obvious that it's happening? And so I'm curious in terms of like, but I think that for me at least, it does seem like something that's important to come and kind of talk and figure these things out, and have to kind of go back and forth between that.
Well, from the very beginning, you designed this thing for making us happy, relaxed, and being able to exchange ideas more fluently. If otherwise, it wouldn't have worked. So the first thing is we need to enhance, to guarantee the people to be happy for exchanging ideas. That's the lesson from the art. The other one is here, at least for me, it was a kind of, okay, try to find a way to get out of yourself by means of assuming other people, other animals, even extinct animals. That's a nice thing. I think it is easier than expected. In Concord, we have been trying to figure out how to be sending, I mean, people living in the International Space Station, they are a community. People living there, this is a really almost totally closed system, correct? they are not killing each other, like in the movie. They are not killing each other, they are a community. What kind of community do we as a species want to send to other planets? Even if we go to the moon, to Mars, or planets without any life, what kind of ambassadors we are going to send? This is an important topic, because if you send people repeating the same errors our species has been making here, then we are just going to expand the same rubbish everywhere. Yeah. So I really think by means of thinking what kind of people we as a species want to send to other planets to discover life there or to establish up there, we can say, okay, this is the ideal community to be constructed, and then turn back into our planet and say, well, why not to apply in our own planet the kind of ambassadors, the kind of embassy we want to send there. We have been manipulating this idea a little bit, and we need to continue with that. But I think that's coming from the art, from the very beginning. After looking at your talk about the, how it calls, biosphere or whatever, biosphere, yeah, this one, yeah, 2.
Yeah, because we're 1.
Okay, the art will be number 3, number 4, and then we will do it better.
I've been thinking about intentional communities and what they can do. That maybe, is it just about satisfying the members of that community, or does it have a larger function? And thinking maybe also about cults, which we talked about, how a cult can actually grow into precepts for a larger governing system that devolves perhaps, but it's a way of rejuvenating. Christianity, for one, had a positive function in some ways for a certain amount of time. So maybe we need these kind of cataclysms or messiahs in order to rejuvenate the planet, because as individuals, it's very difficult for us to do that. But maybe these model communities can provide a possibility for ideas about sustainability, ways to live.
I mean, in the end, it was funny because, you know, the way that I can explain how I met the people and I actually chose the people is based a lot really on intuition and synchronicity and thinking about the mix of personalities. You know, we can't just have all quiet people, we can't all have loud people, we need a breadth of personality. And now we have this kind of, we've discovered and we've created our own language in the Ark. We have certain jokes, certain slogans like balls to the wall, stranger danger, between ourselves. And about the fact that, you know, we've even joked about how we could do the Ark in different countries in different ways. Maybe we'd get a cruise ship and go around to different places and do the Ark. You know, so this idea of going to different planets, I think we've been quite a good test module to see maybe we could survive on Mars, you know, because we have such a wide range of personalities and thought systems and things. So now to the public, if anybody has a question, maybe you can use this microphone.
Blablabla, ça marche ou pas? Il ne marche pas celui-là? Si, il marche. Maybe you could explain a bit more, Grace, about the because there is a kind of from outside. Can you hear me? Yeah. From outside there is exists this a kind of paradox, but that is maybe the paradox of all communities, between the very strict rules that make the community function, the fact that there is no communication at all with the outside, all this isolation and the program that you settle every day with hours to follow, etc. So something very strictly organized, and I guess the aim of freedom in exchange or of fluidity in dialogue, or can you tell me a bit more?
Well, I've tried to create like a platform which would be both. It would be like a safe container, you know, where we'd have rules and certain disciplines. But because we'd have these rules, it would actually give us room to play, and play in ways that we don't normally get to play. So, for example, every morning we would have a silent breakfast, you know, and at first that was quite difficult because people aren't used to being silent with other people. You know, they might be silent at home with their family, but they're not used to a whole group. And so eventually through the week, people started to get used to it, you know, and it gave this kind of pleasure because you would go outside, you'd look at the garden, you'd, you know, contemplate the day before we began. So it was another way of, you know, integrating the processes that were going on through the week, was through silence. The other rules, yes, really it was also about creating forms of abstraction, but in order to have abstraction you have to have some formality, you know. So I've lived in many communities, and you know, I've lived in really strict Buddhist monasteries where you get up at 4:30 in the morning, you meditate for 2 hours, you clean the toilets, then you eat a breakfast, then you go and do a work, and then you have a huge lunch at 11 because that's your only meal for the day. And then in the afternoon you can have some rest, and then you meditate again at 7, 8, and then you go to sleep at 9. And that kind of rhythm, you know, I couldn't do it for more than a few months because I started to go nuts because there's no space to breathe. And then I've also lived in communities that are totally have no boundaries, and it becomes dangerous in a way, you know, like the Hare Krishnas, where, for example, there's no locks on the doors, you know, even in the toilets, there's no privacy, and it's really about, it's too much. To me, that's too much sharing, too much community. So there has to be a balance between both the sharing and the containment. So I really tried, and I really thought hard about how to do that in order to expand play. You know, and for the Ark, most people who have come to the Ark haven't really lived in communities or done retreats. So some things felt really out of context and, you know, a bit scary, a bit fearful and stuff. And there were times when I think every participant went through a phase of like, oh, I don't trust the system, the Ark system, you know, like, oh, why is that rule there? Why is that rule there? You know, and they would question things. But I think in the end, I hope so, that it's made some sort of sense having these rules. And it's allowed, people to be more creative in different ways that they don't normally get to be creative. What do you think?
Same than you.
Okay. Another question, please.
Interesting. Ouais, bon, okay. Yeah, maybe it would be interesting to know more about what will happen after the arc. How are you going to structure the different dialogue, relationships that was created during the arc? Because there is different timeline in this project.
Yes, I think that's I don't think that's really the best, best question for this panel, because in a way we'll talk about that in other panels, because we talk about community and culture. And I mean, I can relate it to ecology and capitalism, like what is going to be the effect of the arc on when we go outside in terms of ecology and capitalism. I mean, I hope it does make people just, you know, tonight when they get their phones back, and tomorrow they start looking at their emails, to understand it's actually quite nice not to have email for a while, and to have that space, and the importance of that, and the importance of silence. And yeah, and also in terms of ecology, there's different types of ecology, because obviously there's nature, there's you know, the natural world ecology, but now in the arc we have our own ecology. So, you know, how our ecology will grow and change over time. We will be printing in the next journal, Labo Journal, we will have 20 pages, and we will have different contributions from the different participants. Texts, we'll have recipes, spiritual exercises, drawings, all sorts of things. And yes, then we're going to do a book and an exhibition, but it's a longer process. It's not like there's a final date. So I'm interested in, if we do an exhibition in a year or two, if people from the art come to that exhibition, and we can ask, you know, how the experience changed them over a longer period of time. So, yeah. Any comments?
No, I'm happy by listening in.
Okay. Any more questions, please? Okay.
Yes, you just mentioned that there will be an exhibition. So I would like to know if in your mind this type of experience is a way of pushing the limits of art, or is it something necessary for art to survive, to create different kind of experience? Is the exhibition necessary in a way, or it could be just a formality?
Well, nowadays, because exhibitions are so hard to do, I don't think it can be a formality, because of how difficult it is to raise money to do exhibitions. We can't just take them for granted in that way. But no, I mean, from the very beginning, I didn't think, oh, let's do an exhibition. It's just come through the process of working together, and the amount of labour and time we did making all the costumes and the masks and things, and obviously all the documentation, the archival documentation. And I have a lot of documentation from living in other communities. And people are interested in seeing that. People obviously who couldn't come to the Arc. I mean, we will have a dedicated website of information as well, talks and meditations. We've recorded all the meditations, so people can practice and see these at home. But yeah, for me, it's not really this kind of process, you could say, is the exhibition is just one part of it. I feel like it's more of a living system than that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I guess to me, exhibitions kind of act as these sort of like testing grounds, or ways to kind of have thought experiments. Not always, but I think they can. And of course, you know, only certain people will see them. But nowadays, things tend to kind of live on in catalogs. And I mean, I guess I've certainly, there's so many exhibitions that I've never had the chance to see, but then I encounter the catalog, and it's this amazing experiment in terms of kind of bringing art or theory together to kind of try new things. And so I think that if, you know, with this idea of an exhibition, if it happens, that's kind of what I would see it as. And I am, and also kind of producing a narrative of what the arc, you know, is or was or what it could do. And I think that is useful, even if it's only going to be experienced by a small or comparatively small, you know, amount of people in the world. Yeah,
because right now this year, the last 2 years, funny enough, there's been like quite a lot of retrospectives looking back at intentional communities from the 60s and 70s. I mean, there's a big show called Hippie Modernism, which we bought the catalogue for. That's a show that's from Walker Arts and Berkeley. And they're looking back on those communities now. And I also went to a show when I was in Santa Fe, was looking at communities in the Southwest region. So that's in Arizona and New Mexico. And it is really nice to go to those kind of exhibitions and see, you know, texts and photos. And I really liked that exhibition in Santa Fe because there were people there who lived in those communities who just happened to be there on the day that I was, you know, wandering around the gallery, and I could hear them, and they were telling stories about, I remember when we did that, I remember, and this is like 40, 50 years later, you know, they're remembering when they'd taken peyote and, you know, all their adventure, the things they could remember. Yeah, so.
I was just thinking that, yeah, why is it that we have exhibitions? And perhaps it's a way to make things that are in people's minds visible. It's a way to share ideas, and it's really important to keep doing it. It's becoming more difficult, I think, in the United States, at least, probably elsewhere, that art's become such a market and such a plaything of the wealthy. So finding places like this and artist-run spaces, it's worth looking for them, because that's what brings us together.
So I think we're going to finish this panel for now. We'll have a 10-minute break, and then we'll begin the next panel. Thank you.